Hello everyone, so today I have a different video for us. I have a tutorial on how I've been making these paper dolls. I think these are such a fun way to experiment with your art, with your style, to put little different characters in your life. These can be tucked behind picture frames or on bookshelves and just dotted all around the house. I not only think they're just a fun way to make art, but I think they're really inspiring and hopefully can really get your gears turning. And they're really simple. I don't do it maybe the best way or the perfect way, but this is just how I do it. So to start off, I do a rough sketch on a piece of copy paper. It's key that you want something thin because we're going to be doing a light box technique under this. And so I go in, I sketch with my pencil, and then I outline it in black. And you can see I've outlined all the places I'm going to cut out. And what I did is I put my copy paper on my iPad with a white screen, and then I put the watercolor paper on top and just traced over those lines. It's really easy, and if you're having difficulty seeing through it, you can always go into a dark room, and that really helps. Right now I'm just adding a couple extra little details. But for the light box technique, if you don't have an iPad, you could use a window. I find that kind of tricky. You could always print out a template or something like that. Maybe I'll be able to draw one up and link it down in the description. If I don't get to that or forget, please remind me. That'd be super easy and simple to do. But I think you can just have fun. It doesn't have to be perfect. The reason I do a template is so that I know everything will match up, but I think you could eyeball it and trim it as you go. I don't want this to be a tutorial for you to copy what I've made. I want this to be a tutorial for how you can do this same technique with your art. I think that's where the fun really comes in. So, like I said, I'm using watercolor paper because we are going to be doing watercolors here. And I've just gone in, erased some of those pencil lines so it lightens up. And I'm just having fun. I like to do different colors with my characters. I don't give them just skin tones. Obviously, this girl is blue. And I just think it's fun. I think what makes these paper dolls so inspiring is that because it almost has this craft element to it, you can kind of experiment. Things don't feel as precious. We're going to be cutting it up. So you have to dive in. You have to get your hands on it. And you just kind of have to go for it. And I feel like if it didn't turn out perfect, that's okay because I have my template. I can retrace something I didn't like and repaint it on a piece of scrap paper or a different sheet of paper, depending on how much space I need, of course. But I don't know, it's kind of fun. It is a bit of a puzzle when you are drawing it out, and each one's going to be different. Today I'm drawing this girl. She's got big pink hair, and it's funny because her outfit, it looks like a shirt, but it's supposed to be a mini dress because she's just got such long legs. It does look like the tiniest little shirt ever, and it's a bit scandalous, but it's not supposed to be. I thought when I added the boots, she could be a go-go dancer and just apparently wearing the tiniest little dress ever, which maybe is appropriate. I don't know. But it can be a little bit of a puzzle deciding how you're going to piece them all together. Generally, though, I do it the way I've shown you here, where I have the head and the torso as one piece. Some people like to do the head as its own piece, which I'm going to experiment with. And if you want to see how that experiment turned out, you can check it out on TikTok or Instagram. I'll post it there sometime in the near future. I also went to Michael's today, and I got these mini paper fasteners, these mini brads. You'll see I'm using larger ones later on, but I think the minis are going to be really well. But again, I'll maybe leave an update in the description. But use what you have. Use what's available to you. I didn't have a Michael's near me when I first started doing these. I only had Walmart, so I got what Walmart had, and then I'm at my parents' house right now, so they live by a Michael's, so I went and got some of the miniature brads. And so that's why, I didn't have them to begin with. I just wanted to, start making while I was inspired. I think that's the important part. So if this inspires you, make it with what you've got. If you don't have brads, use staples, use pins, use something, use tape. It doesn't matter. They don't have to be super mobile. But that was a little bit of a tangent, and I want to get back to what I was saying. So the way I usually break it up is I have the head and the torso as one attached piece. Then the legs are two pieces where I have the upper thigh and like the hip as one spot, and then the knee all the way down to the foot is its own other chunk. And this will be more clear when the pieces are painted in because you'll just be able to see them easier than the sketches. As for the arms, I do the same thing. So from the shoulder to the elbow, that's one chunk, and then from the elbow down to the hand, that's another. So all in all for this doll, it's taking me 9 pieces to cut, and I'm painting here on a 5x7 sheet of paper. You can make it as large as you want. I have only 5x7 sheets of watercolor paper. And so I know I have to make it within those dimensions, but that doesn't mean it can only be 7 inches tall, obviously, because I can make it, you know, like you see, it's broken up into different pieces. And so I think I traced it out on a piece of copy paper. So this doll is probably just over 7 inches. But if you have larger paper, feel free to use that. Or if you don't feel like doing a larger doll, if that's intimidating to you, do something smaller. You don't even have to do it this way where it's all broken up. And we're going to hinge it together. You could always paint a character and then cut it out and see if that's fun to you. Just do what seems accessible, what seems fun, what seems inspiring, because like I said, this shouldn't be a tutorial on exactly how you can make what I've made. I think it should just be something to help inspire you, and if you want to see how I did it, then that should help feed your inspiration. So now with my paper doll, I'm just going in and adding some patterns to her clothes. I thought this kind of groovy retro square pattern would be pretty cute, especially given the fact that she was starting to remind me of a go-go dancer. I wanted to do something that felt kind of 70s and 60s. I also thought that the orange dress was a nice contrast to her skin tone, that blue. I don't know if people think she looks like a zombie or if the colorful skin tones that I do are weird to people, but I personally find them really fun. I find it just fresh because I have so many more options. I can do green, I can do, pink, purple. I don't have to just be stuck to a range of beiges and browns. And I really love color, so I think adding that pop of color to the skin and the clothes and the hair is just really fun to me. Now, I know I said that part of what makes these so fun is that they have to be cut up. They have to be manhandled a little bit when we're putting them together. And so it can be a really fun, easygoing, stress-free project. And I think that is absolutely true. At the same time, I would encourage you to remember that you're making art. Just because this would fall into more of a quote-unquote craft type of project, it doesn't mean it isn't still art. I always had a hard time finding that line that people draw between craft and art because I think both are just creative expressions that people use to communicate something. And so don't think of this as worth less than if you were to paint this character in a scene or not cut it up or something. I think that if you take your time and you put in the dedication and the love into it and you really value what you're making, it makes this project even more fun because it just becomes a piece of mobile art that you can use in all different places. It can still be decor. It can still have some feeling to it that you're communicating, and you're just adding life to it. You're adding movement. You're adding flexibility. And I think that that's something I also really enjoy, is that it feels like a craft project, but I can have the intention of art put into that. I hope that doesn't sound too prestigious. Sometimes I think that when we talk about art, it's really easy to sound so hoity-toity and annoying about it. But I just mean it in that I don't like it when people start to discredit art. They start to discredit the value and the personality somebody's put into it just because they see it as an art form that is less than. It's less than something that you would hang in a gallery. I see myself as an artist, but I don't think I'll ever have something in a standard gallery. I don't think that's my goal. That's not what I want to do with my art. My art is playful. It's fun. I like to see it in my home and other people's homes. I like to see it in books. And so don't let yourself feel like, just because you're making a project like this, that it isn't art, that it's just a craft. Because I think that's silly, and I think we need to stop defining those two as totally different things. Now, I know that this is a tutorial and I shouldn't be sitting here ranting and raving about my thoughts on art and craft, but I do get a bit passionate about it because so much of the art I make and the art that I love, it falls into what people would consider craft or illustration. Very rarely has anybody ever described my art as fine art. And while that used to bother me, and it used to give me a feeling of imposter syndrome, it now only bothers me that people want to lower my art because it doesn't fit their idea of what art should be. And I just wanted to put that message out there because I know if I'm thinking it, then there's likely somebody else who's thought the exact same thing as me. So take your time with this project, have fun with it, don't feel precious about it, but also value what you're making at the same time. See it as something fun and enjoyable and also just art for art's sake. What also makes this project so great for somebody to work on is that it's all divided up. You might do the face and the torso one day and then come back the next day and do the legs. You can really take it in bite-sized chunks. To do the painting portion, I think it took me maybe an hour, but that was to do all of it. That was line art and shading and patterns, all of that included. These aren't super big dolls, and so they're pretty easy to get done in a day. I mean, I got this done, sketch, cutting it, painting it. I think it maybe took me an hour and a half, maybe at most 2 hours, but that's just because I lollygag a bit when I'm creating stuff. Well, you can see here that I started to outline the face, and then I remembered, oh my goodness, I haven't done any shadows yet. If you watched any of my other videos, then you know that me and shading when it comes to watercolor, we're not really friends yet. Now the shading on this one I think turned out well, but I almost forgot it, and that wouldn't have been too great. I've said this before in some of my other videos, but I think watching the line art back in this video, and any video where I'm doing line art, is so satisfying because it's really where the character comes alive. You can see those details so easily. They have this soul almost. They go from being just a shadow or a like an essence of a character to a whole being with a story and a personality and a name. I actually didn't end up naming this character, so if you have any suggestions, I'd really love to hear it, and we can kind of debate names in the comments. I think that would be kind of fun. Does she have a certain personality? What is her backstory, you think? What do you think she does for a job? Do you think she's a go-go dancer, or do you think she just kind of takes inspiration from that era? I'd love to know what you see. I think it's always so fun to share what each person sees in a particular piece of art because we all see something different and there's no right answer, and I just think it'd be a blast if we talked about it in the comments and we could all look through what other people saw. So now as I'm going in and finishing up that line work, I know it's a bit difficult to see exactly what I'm doing. I tried my best to keep it in frame, but I'm turning the page around. But take that as a lesson if you struggle with line art. It definitely is something that practice gets you better. I won't say that practice makes perfect because I'm definitely not perfect at it. But just take your time. Having steady hands and steady breathing and being in a calm environment definitely helps. But I have to say, turning the page around, I forget to do that. I find myself straining my wrists and my neck in these really awkward and uncomfortable positions. And then I remember, oh, I can just turn the paper and it makes it a whole lot easier. So move your page around, get comfortable, do what works for you. I just hope that you're able to see enough of what I'm doing. I think you get the gist though. And again, this is just the way I paint. It doesn't have to be the way you paint. You might find it much more enjoyable to use a pen and do the outlines first or second or not at all. You don't have to use a paintbrush like I am. I just personally like this look, and this is how I like to make my characters. As you're working on your paper doll, think of other things you could do to put your own twist on it too. I think something that would be really fun that I haven't experimented with yet is changing out her clothes. Maybe you'll paint a couple different bodies and you'll give her different outfits for different days, and you could even use the same template and draw just kind of a basic shape of her and then draw different clothes on top of it. I think that would be so cool, and it's definitely something I want to experiment with in the future. You might also think about where you could put this doll. Maybe you're making it for somebody's room. I think these would look so charming in a little girl's room or a little boy's room. maybe all dancing along the windowsills and things like that, or maybe they'd make a really fun bookmark for a friend. There's so many opportunities for these to just be playful little creations, and that's why I really wanted to make a tutorial on them. I think that they just lend themselves to so many things. But don't hold yourself back just because you've seen me do it one certain way. I can't say that enough. Do it the way you want and the way that feels comfortable. Do what's inspiring to you. So now I've pretty much got her all painted up, and it's time to cut her out. I always leave a little bit of a white margin, as you can see. That doesn't bother me. If it bothers you, then go ahead and cut a bit closer. For assembly, I have these brads. I talked about these earlier. I have smaller ones that I'm going to test out today. Let you know how those work out for me in the description. I have a piece of cardboard and a little pin here. This is just a pin I made. Anything small and sharp will work. You could use a sewing needle. I also used a hole punch, or I showed a hole punch but didn't use it. It ended up just being too big for my doll and my paper fasteners. And then I have one more tool that I'm going to show you here in a little bit, and it is a yarn needle. Now again, I'm just using what I have. These aren't perfect tools, but the yarn needle helps for making the hole a bit wider. What you can see I do is I use my peanut-shaped pin here, and I poke a hole between both layers that I want to attach with the brad. And it's a bit hard with the watercolor paper, but just be patient. Don't force it too much. Just take your time. Sometimes wiggling it a bit helps. And having something soft underneath, like that piece of cardboard, you could also use a piece of foam or styrofoam, is really helpful. So you can see that I have my yarn needle here, and I just run it right through both of the little tiny holes I made. This is really key with the watercolor paper and the brads, because the brads don't want to go through such a thick paper very easily, and so sometimes they'll get bent out of shape, or they'll tear the paper, and you don't want that. Sometimes the paper will tear a little, but as long as your pieces all stay together and they're not ripping at the edges, that's what's really going to be important here. So then what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and gently wiggle them through. Sometimes I use that piece of cardboard underneath to kind of press through the backing of the paper. Having that piece of cardboard, just rip off something, use an egg carton if you need to. Anything, I'm telling you, it really makes a difference. I'm putting these together. So then I do one section at a time. If I'm working on the arms like I am now, instead of building out the entire arm, I'll do the first top half of the arm, and then you'll see I'll go in and do the bottom half, or the other side. This just helps me keep things even and level, and I also like to see her slowly come together. It kind of creates a bit of surprise for the very end. Another thing you might want to keep in mind while you're doing this is how the pieces are moving. So you can see I kind of test it out after I do each one, and now I've sped up the footage just a bit so that you don't have to watch me do this in real time, because I think that'd be a bit long and a bit boring. But I move them around. Sometimes I wiggle it just enough to widen the hole a bit, and I haven't had any problems with tearing it. And as you can see, my paper dolls have very thin, skinny arms and legs. I create very long-armed and long-legged characters. For some reason, that's just the way I draw. And I just find if you're very gentle, you can wiggle the paper around the brad without creating a big hole or tearing the paper. Again, I'm using watercolor paper. The description has the link for the paper I used down below. It was very affordable. You get a lot, about 120 sheets. I really like it. It's available on Amazon. It may not be perfect, but I like it, and I haven't had any issues with it yet. Something that you might want to also be mindful of, depending on how big your character is and how you've drawn them, is the directions those brads are. With her hair being so big, it's not really a big deal here. But when I do her arms, I don't want the arms of the brad, or those little tabs that pull out, to be sticking out at her elbows, right? I want those to be parallel with her arm length. And so it's just something to keep in mind. Sometimes you have to reposition them, but it's really not a big deal at all. And for your paper doll, you're just going through the same process with each little bit, being careful, being mindful, but also knowing that sometimes you really do have to jam that needle through to get things the way you want them. But I'm going in, doing the arms, and I'm just thinking also about what layers I want on top, right? Of course, I want her dress to be over her legs. And you can always line things up without punching any holes before you start your assembly, right? You could line them up and see what looks best to you. I always like to do it from the top down. So I'll start with the shoulder piece and then I'll go to the hand piece, and I usually put the hand piece over the shoulder piece. For whatever reason, that's just what looks best to me, and I'll do the same thing with the legs. The lower half of the leg, I usually end up putting on top of the upper half of the leg. I don't know if it just looks better or if it's just the way I do it. Here you can see I've turned my piece over and I'm punching it from the back side. And that's because I want to make sure I have enough paper showing on that leg. I don't want to blindly eyeball it and not have the paper lined up the way it needs to be, or to punch the hole to the very, very top where it's going to rip as soon as I try and put that brad in, or as soon as I try and put my yarn needle through. So play around, fiddle around with it. These are so fun because, like I said, they're kind of a puzzle, and so you can just experiment, and the great thing is that you can see how it's going to look before you do anything permanent in terms of attaching. But let's say that you're being careful, you're trying your best, and you punch a hole in the wrong spot, or as you're pushing the brad through, it tears. That's okay. Even though it's not maybe the thing you would want to happen, hold on to that template, retrace it, you have the exact same formula, and you can repaint that one specific piece. And when you're doing just one piece or even two pieces, depending on what happens, it's not going to take very long, and you can have fun with it. Maybe the second half of her leg is green and you can come up with a backstory for it. You can build these stories around these characters, whether it's intentional or you're just using some creative juices to cover up a mistake. Either way, don't take it too seriously. Have fun. Do what you can. And also, if you don't love the first one you make, guess what? You can make another one and another one and another one. You don't have to have your reputation be reliant on the first paper doll you make or just one that you make in general. As I'm finishing her up and I'm putting on the last part of her leg, this is where I get so excited because you can really see her come to life. It's kind of like that line art where you see her personality come through. When we have her all put together, you get to see the final vision, and I just think that's so fun. I'm being careful here, and once again, you can see with every attachment I've done, I've kind of rotated her leg just to make sure I get the movement I want. With the smaller brads or the smaller attachments, I'm hoping that I can get them to move even more. So again, check out the description and you will see how those worked out for me. Like I said, I'm going to work on that experiment today because I've got some fun ideas for these paper dolls, which I can't wait to share in the near future. But that is her all done. You can see, even with the larger brads, I still get good movement. And her legs, those are some skinny legs. So that just goes to show that you can do a lot with these. But here is her all finished up. Tell me if you make one. Share it with me on Instagram or TikTok. I'd love to see it. At the end of this video, I threw in a couple pictures just so you can see how cute she looks dotted around my house. But until then, I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.